Bristol has a long tradition of battling for social and political justice, and of its suppression. In 1831, a demand for the right to vote was brutally suppressed by dragoon guards. The dragoons were called in again in 1892 to assist the police in crushing a demonstration calling for trade union rights. 3 of the organisers of that demonstration were sent to Horfield Jail, but the trade union movement in Bristol remained strong. Bristol trade unionist Ron Whiteford saw the general strike of 1926 as a demonstration of the power of the trade union movement when it acted in solidarity.
Britain in 1926 was not the land fit for heroes that had been promised. The mine workers were in the vanguard and were prepared to take on the state to stop cuts in their wages.
We regret to have to announce that all efforts at compromise between the Trades Union Council and the government regarding the position in the coal fields having failed, a general strike will begin tomorrow at midnight.
At the coalfields on May the 4th, pickets were on duty, but none were needed. Railways, docks and buses were paralysed, for workers took up the call to stop work enthusiastically.
But fellow trade unionist Marge Evans was all too aware of the pitfalls.
It wasn't an organised general strike. It's hopeless to call a general strike unless you have practically every worker in the country to come out. I mean, that's a general strike. Well, some of them weren't even unionised. And the government called on volunteers, and the young students thought it was a joke, to drive trams and cars and buses.
Then, despite the solidarity of the working class and their determination to win,
it is London calling the British Isles. We have just received the news that the general strike has called off by the leaders of the Trades Union Council.
Engine driver Bill Paxton was shattered by the news.
The news came through. That was 12 days that been called off. You've never seen such unbelievable expressions on men's faces. We was on the peak of victory.
Yeah.
We was touching the plum on top of the tree.
So instead of the system being changed, the ugly face of capitalism became worse with mounting unemployment. The struggles of the unemployed for work culminating in the hunger marches of the 30s.
When the miners walked up from South Wales, they were on their way, if you remember, to London. And it coincided with the May Day rally we were having in Bristol. And we had a reception centre for them. And we marched, and I remember that march in 1926. When we marched to the Downs, and I marched with the miners, which was a very enthusiastic march, one of the best we ever had, I think, with banners, because there was so much sympathy for the miners, you see, during that period.
The trade union movement revived after the end of the Second World War, but after the celebrations, Bristolians were going to be in for a shock.
Of course, it was a tremendous relief to all of us.
Bill Nicholas, a tank driver during the war, soon got involved in the squatting movement and the demand for housing.
Here, down in this dip, was what they called the White City. And it became a squatters' camp, as they called it. Probably the first time in the English language that squatter camp or squatters became a phrase for people that occupied empty premises. It was a great social event. a progressive event in my view, and it led to the point that people needed housing. Of course, I was right here, I was here and watched it happen.
But the trade unions continued to be dominated by men, and it wasn't until the 1960s that women workers in Bristol, as in the rest of Britain, intensified the demand for equal pay. A strike by women workers at Ford's inspired similar protests throughout the UK, and eventually the passing of gender equality legislation in Parliament. At the same time, Bristol led the battle for racial equality. Guy Bailey, recently arrived from Jamaica, encountered blatant discrimination when he tried to get work with the Bristol Bus Company.
When I got into the reception, the lady at the time, I can remember, said to the manager, "Oh, the 2 o'clock appointment is here," something to that effect, and he's black. And I heard the manager said, "Tell him all the vacancies are taken and there's no more." And that was that. I was very disappointed, really, really very disappointed.
Inspired by the civil rights movement in America, black workers and their supporters in Bristol boycotted its buses until the bus company ended its discriminatory policies. It was a clear victory for the campaign and its coordinator, Paul Stevenson.
Well, of course, we're very pleased indeed. I think this is going to be welcomed by coloured people all over Bristol and many, many Bristolians who came in and gave us their sympathy.
But discrimination in employment, in housing and in the law courts continued and contributed to the Bristol Risings in 1980 and 1986. Those events should have conveyed a message to those in authority, says Barbara Dettering of West Indian Parents and Friends.
The lessons I think they should have learned is that we are not cattle. And you don't just herd us all up into one area, and sort of a pen. You will rebel. And I think they should learn to treat us all as people and forget this colour of the skin. We are all individuals. We are all human beings, same as that.
The Bristol tradition of resistance to injustice is still alive and kicking. Earlier this year, thousands turned out to protest against the government's austerity policies. It was a day that turned from pouring rain to sudden sunshine, from sombre protest to sunlit hope for the future. Bristol took a few steps forward in the journey to justice.
I belong here with the riots and the protests and the fights for equality. I belong here with the ranters and the ravers and the multicultural students studying effectively. Oh, city of paradoxes, where are you going to take me today? Oh, conflicting urbanization, are you going to show me a better way? Right now, in this place, we have the opportunity to do something great, to do something amazing together.